Here's more wrestling news for July 25th, 2021. And your headlines for this afternoon include: Matt Cardona shocks wrestling world with bloody GCW win over Nick Gage. Fans do the unthinkable. Lance Archer pulls out of indie show after brutal Texas Deathmatch on AEW Dynamite. Kenny Omega talks possibilities of Daniel Bryan and CM Punk joining AEW. Jim Ross on which AEW star is the closest thing I've seen to Stone Cold. X-Pac talks WWE canceling Green Kane gimmick. Former WWE champion discusses the possibility of being moved to Raw. Beth Phoenix cried after toxic feedback, and more. We are starting off with Matt Cardona, who was with WWE for a decade and a half before his release in April 2020. Since then, Cardona has appeared in AEW, Impact, and GCW, places he never could have gone as a WWE superstar. Speaking on Oral Sessions this week, Cardona discussed his WWE departure, saying he was pleased it happened, as his contract was meant to expire anyway in 2020. He said, "My contract was up in August. I had not resigned, I didn't know if I wanted to stay and go. So I was like, oh my god, I hope they don't release me and I just rot until August. So once I saw people going, I was like, oh please, fire me. I already had my Pro Wrestling Tees store set up." Cardona added that he'd been living with anxiety for over a year negotiating a new deal with WWE, and though losing his dream job and paycheck sucked, he was happy the decision had been made for him. Matt's time in WWE had plenty of highs and lows before his 2020 release, and with the success he's had since leaving, being released may have been the best thing to happen to the former Zack Ryder. Cardona has been doing a lot since leaving WWE, and this week became the brand new GCW champion. Facing Nick Gage at GCW Homecoming Night 1, Cardona lost more blood than he'd ever shed in WWE, thanks to Gage using light tubes in a pizza cutter. Gage was momentarily distracted when Chris Jericho's Judas theme played, a reference to their upcoming Dynamite match, but it wasn't Jericho who appeared, but the 440 faction, who attacked Gage and allowed Cardona to hit the Rough Rider to win the gold. As a bloody Cardona celebrated in the ring, fans threw beer and trash in disgust of the new GCW champion, who ended the 106-day reign of the Deathmatch legend. Now on this week's AEW Dynamite, Lance Archer captured the IWGP United States title from Jon Moxley in a brutal death match that's taken its toll on the Murderhawk monster. On Twitter, Archer confirmed that he'd pulled out of the SWE Fury Wrestling TV show in Lubbock, Texas, blaming his brutal Moxley match and his upcoming scheduled Dynamite match for the cancellation. It's a shame when plans fall through, but it's understandable, as Archer went through a lot this past Wednesday when he faced Jon Moxley. Archer was meant to face Big Cass, aka Impact's W. Morrissey, with Melina in his corner at the SWE event, but the new IWGP US champion is now focusing on rehabbing his body in preparation of his title defense at Fight for the Fallen against Hikuleo. For the past week, there's been plenty of reports that CM Punk and Daniel Bryan will join AEW next month, and that's something a lot of fans want to see. Now, AEW Executive Vice President and World Champion Kenny Omega is weighing in on things, as during an interview with Wrestling Observer Radio, he discussed both men, but didn't confirm either signing. He said, "Daniel Bryan, I always knew he was incredibly intelligent. He's ridiculously smart, especially when it comes to professional wrestling. For him to kind of create a movement, an actual legitimate movement in the Yes Movement, for him to come up with that, he created it." Omega refuted WWE's claims that there were always plans for Bryan to headline WrestleMania 30, saying that the former WWE champion made it the plan because he's that smart. Discussing CM Punk, Omega said, "A guy who probably has a different line of thinking than your current day performer, your average performer. And he has this incredible reputation, and he has fans to this day who would follow him to the ends of the earth, a very dedicated fan base. And that fan base believes he's the best in the world and will be the best until the end of time." AEW knows a thing or two about having a dedicated fan base, and when asked about whether either man is expected to join AEW, Omega did let something major slip. "They were able to break every ceiling that was placed in front of them and emerge as an actual legend that will never be forgotten. So it's cool for me to think that I'll be able to get in the ring with these two." This is the first time a top-tier name in AEW has said that he'll be able to get in the ring with Bryan and Punk, And despite the company keeping a tight lid on things, it seems Omega is just the latest person to confirm the impending debut of these two former WWE champions. Omega is excited to one day face Punk and Bryan in AEW, but AJ Styles remains off limits to the AEW World Champion. In that same interview, Omega said he still has hope that he'll get to face Styles again one day, but with AJ saying his most recent contract with WWE will be his last as a wrestler, don't bet on that match happening. On this week's Dynamite, Jon Moxley lost the IWGP US title to Lance Archer, but his Texas Deathmatch was just another fantastic encounter he's had since joining AEW in 2019. Moxley's no-nonsense and devil-may-care attitude has earned him a ton of love from the AEW crowd, especially after his final few months in WWE left a lot to be desired. Speaking on his podcast, Jim Ross discussed Moxley's last successful US title defense against Carl Anderson and had some pretty huge praise for the former Dean Ambrose. He said, "I thought Carl Anderson had the best match I've ever seen him have on television against Jon Moxley. He had a great match. Moxley is the closest thing I've seen in pro wrestling like Stone Cold Steve Austin since Stone Cold. Attitudinal, body English, facial expression, and legitimate intensity. Absolutely phenomenal." Moxley only recently lost the IWGP US title, but it's just a matter of time before he holds gold again, especially as AEW, or at least Jim Ross, consider him close to arguably the biggest name in professional wrestling history. Back to WWE, and over the decades, Glenn Jacobs has had a lot of looks, but one look that never made it to TV was for a green Kane attire. Photos exist of a green Kane getup, which would have been connected to X-Pac, as the pair were tag team partners in the Attitude Era at a time when X-Pac was with DX. Speaking on his Pro Wrestling for Life podcast, Sean Waltman said how it's probably for the best that the green Kane attire never happened for real. "It would not have been good for Kane. Maybe everyone could have said, oh, we get to see him in green one time, but he's not fucking in DX. He's Kane. He's the big red machine. He is not the fucking big green machine, for fuck's sake." The big green machine may have been a fun one-off attire for Kane, but it would only be a matter of time before he'd go back to red, and although we never got to see him in green on TV, at least it made for some great photos that fans can find online. In 2016, WWE re-established its brand split, and Carmella was called up to SmackDown, where she's remained for her entire main roster career. In fact, Carmella is one of a few names joining the ranks of Nia Jax, Bobby Lashley, and Drew McIntyre to never swap brands since the brand split, but that streak could end later this year. Speaking to Sportskeeda, the former SmackDown Women's Champion discussed the possibility of moving to Raw in a WWE draft rumored for later this year. She said, "I feel like I've kind of done everything I could do here on SmackDown, and that's why I do get excited when new girls come up. It's like, okay, an opportunity for fresh matchups and fresh stories. So if it happens, if this is the year, cool. If not, then maybe I'll just bleed blue forever. I have no idea, but no matter what, SmackDown will have such a place in my heart." In that same interview, Carmella revealed her intentions to fight Toni Storm, the latest member of the SmackDown roster, but if there are plans for the Staten Island Princess to be moved to Raw later this year, this potential feud may be short-lived. And we're ending with Beth Phoenix, who has impressed fans as a commentator on NXT, but not everyone is on board with the Glamazon. Speaking on Oral Sessions, the WWE Hall of Famer has said that she'd go home in tears to her husband Edge after receiving hurtful comments from trolls who wanted to bring her down. Beth added that she got past these comments by doing reps and said that Michael Cole advised her that exercise was the best way to block out negativity. Phoenix added that she now has much more fun working alongside Vic Joseph and Wade Barrett behind the commentary desk, and though she said she'd love a final farewell match in the future, she's more than happy as an NXT commentator at this time. Well guys, that's our news for today. Please share your comments below. Also hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to receive all notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.